Hello and welcome to Let's Talk Criterion, and thanks to those who commented on last month's edition and the new title sequence. So what do we have in store for us in September? Well, in the UK we have Charlie Chaplin in the brilliant The Great Dictator, Hearts and Minds documentary film directed by Peter Davis, and Buck and the Preacher, Sidney Poitier's directorial debut feature. While stateside we have the 4K UHD release of Blowout, already in the collection from director Brian De Palma, Sean Baker and Shi Ching-soo's raw verite feature called Takeout, and one of the defining independent films of the 1990s, that's Atom Egoyan's Exotica, Henri-Georges Clouzot's Le Corbeau, and of course we dive into Martin Scorsese's World Cinema Project No. 4, and the more recently released Darius Marder feature, The Sound of Metal. So we begin with the arrival finally of Brian De Palma's Blowout in the US collection, and it now releases in a 4K UHD presentation with Dolby Vision HDR. Now this director has a reputation of delivering tense thrillers and out-and-out psychological horror throughout his long and distinguished career, with Criterion titles such as Sisters, Dressed to Kill, and of course Blowout in the collection. He's fairly well represented so far. Blowout contains a brilliant, stellar performance by John Travolta, a sound effects recordist for a CD film company. Late one evening, when he's out recording new sound effects for the new movie, he accidentally hears a fatal accident involving a prominent public figure, and although he rescues the passenger from the car, his problems have only just begun as he records the entire event on his high-resolution shotgun mic. It all kicks off and we embark on an adventure which is both a mixture of sleuthing and tense thriller, done very much in Hitchcockian style. Now, it's also an 80s movie. I personally think it's one of Travolta's better performances from the 80s, and his screen co-star is Nancy Allen, a firm 80s film favourite, giving a great performance as well. Blowout is directly based on the Michelangelo Antonioni 1966 film Blow Up, also in the Criterion collection, Spine 865. Now the film replaces the medium of photography employed in that film with the medium of audio recording. The concept of Blowout came to De Palma while he was working on the thriller Dressed to Kill in 1980. The film itself was shot in the late autumn of that year and the winter, and in various Philadelphian locations, and that of course is De Palma's home city. As was typical in the 80s, it got a bit lost among the glut of high-profile film releases of the time and didn't enjoy major box office success. But of course, it was destined to become a fan favourite in future years instead, and it certainly doesn't disappoint on that front. Now, I wouldn't say it's De Palma's best work, but nonetheless, I'm delighted that Criterion enthusiasts are finally able to enjoy it in 4K. It's worth mentioning also some of the supporting cast in the film, starting with the superb John Lithgow as Burke. Dennis Frantz is in there, as well as Manny Carr. Now, if that name sounds familiar to you, he was the airport police captain in Die Hard 2, and John Aquino as Detective Mackey. Now, the features, as always, are comprehensive and give more insight into De Palma as a filmmaker. There are two discs in the set, the 4K UHD presentation and a Blu-ray with the supplemental features, which are an hour-long interview with Brian De Palma, conducted by filmmaker Noah Baumbach in 2010, interview with actor Nancy Allen from 2011, De Palma's 1967 feature Murder à la Mode, interview from 2010 with the cameraman Garrett Brown on the Steadicam shots featured in the film within the film, on-set photos taken by photographer Louis Goldman, and an essay by critic Michael Schragau, and on the Blu-ray edition, Pauline Kael's original New Yorker review. Now, as a side note, Pauline Kael had a notorious reputation for praising trashy films and trashing major works by high-profile directors, but she was kind to Blowout though. The cover art for the disc, of course, is still by Eric Skillman. Blowout has a running time of 108 minutes and will certainly benefit from the 4K treatment it's been given. It's some excellent sequences in the film, especially at the finale. The film is out on 4K UHD in the US only on Tuesday, the 6th of September, and the title, of course, is already available in the Blu-ray format in the UK, and it's Spine 562. The American Dream has rarely seemed so far away as in Sean Baker and Shi Ching-shu's raw verite feature Takeout. Now, this is an immersion in the life of an undocumented Chinese immigrant struggling to get by on the margins of post-9/11 New York City. Facing violent retaliation from a loan shark restaurant deliveryman Ming Ding has until nightfall to pay back the money he owes, and he encounters both crushing setbacks and moments of unexpected humanity as he races against time to earn enough in tips over the course of a frantic day. Now, Takeout was filmed in and near Upper Manhattan in New York in the spring of 2003. It debuted at the Slamdance Film Festival in January in 2004, and in June 2008 it was given a limited release through Kavu Pictures. On September 1st, 2009, Kino Entertainment released Takeout in the US on a Region 1 DVD. Now, the feature filmed in a social realist style. The camera follows Ming on his deliveries throughout the Upper Manhattan neighborhood, where social and economic extremes exist side by side. Intercutting between Ming's deliveries and the daily routine of the restaurant, then Takeout presents a harshly real look at the daily lives of illegal Chinese immigrants living in New York City. The film was shot on digital video due to both the cinema verite style and a non-existent budget at the time, with an ensemble cast of both professional and non-professional actors, while shooting without a full crew in an actual takeout restaurant during the operating hours. Now, the film has a cast of 4 principal characters. Ming Ding, Charles Yang, is a determined, reticent deliveryman who is racing against time to come up with the late payment owed to snakehead smugglers. Young Yen Hua Yu, a fellow deliveryman and Ming's closest friend at the takeout. Young is a happy-go-lucky slacker who provides comic relief to the mundane workday. He is the only one at the takeout who is aware of Ming's dilemma. Big Sister Wang Tai Li, the cashier and managerial figure of the takeout. Now, Big Sister is a spunky woman with street smarts who juggles the orders and operations of the takeout restaurant. Wai Justin Wan is a cook at the takeout who has been in the country longer than many of the others. Wai's sense of seniority frequently lands him in minor disagreements of opinion and power with the other workers in the restaurant. Now, many people will know Sean Baker for Prince of Broadway from 2008 and his 2015 feature Tangerine, and of course for the highly praised The Florida Project and Red Rocket, both for A24 films. And it's also worth mentioning his film Snowbird, which made in 2016 was a short fashion film starring the model Abby Lee for Kenzo, shot purely using iPhones. His collaborator on Takeout, Shi Ching-shu, was born and raised in Taipei in Taiwan, and after graduating from Fu Yen Catholic University, she came to New York City to take a master's degree in media studies at the New School. Her first independent feature was Takeout in 2004, which she co-wrote, co-directed and co-edited with Sean Baker. And she also produced and designed costumes on his film Tangerine, and also served as additional camera operator, as well as taking a cameo role in that film, The Florida Project and Red Rocket. So is a programmer for the Slamdance Film Festival and was a member of the jury for that festival in 2019. And in 2021, along with other members of the Red Rocket team, she received the Producer Award at the Hamilton Behind the Camera Awards. Now, the features on the Takeout release are the 4K digital restoration supervised and approved by the directors Sean Baker and Shi Ching-shu with uncompressed stereo soundtrack. An audio commentary featuring Baker, Shu and actor Charles Yang. New interviews with Baker, Shu, Yang and actors Wai Tai Li and Yeng Hua Yu. And programme about the making of the film. There are also deleted scenes on the disc, a screen test, a trailer, and finally an essay written by the filmmaker and the author J. Murphy. So there we go. Oh, and the new cover art is by Slang Incorporated. In Takeout, Baker and Shaw fashion a kind of neorealist survival thriller of the everyday, shedding compassionate light on the too often overlooked lives and labour that keep New York City running. The film has a running time of just 88 minutes and joins the collection in the US on Tuesday the 13th of September, and we have it coming to the UK on Monday the 17th of October, a spine 1149. One of the defining independent films of the 1990s, Atom Egoyan's mesmerising international breakthrough Exotica takes the conventions of the psychological thriller into bold new territory. Unsettling, dreamlike and empathetic, Exotica is a 1994 Canadian drama film set primarily in the fictional Exotica strip club in Toronto. Now, it was written and directed by Atom Egoyan and stars Maya Kirshner, Elias Koteas, Sarah Polley, Bruce Greenwood and Don McKellar. The story concerns a father grieving over the loss of a child and obsessed with a young stripper. It was inspired by Egoyan's curiosity about the role strip clubs play in sex-obsessed societies. Exotica was filmed in Toronto in 1993. The director, Atom Egoyan, who wrote the screenplay, first conceived of the story in the fall of 1992. He was intrigued by the ritualistic nature of table dances and the rule that clients can't touch the dancers, envisioning a story of a dancer having a main customer. He believed the strip club could be an important setting for a film because of the society's sexual obsessions and the roles of such clubs as a collective sexual outlet. While wanting to portray the clubs accurately, he also believed that he could bring a skeptical perspective to the film. So he began working on the screenplay for the movie in February 1993. In writing it, he wanted to structure the story like a striptease itself, gradually revealing an emotionally loaded history. Now, the main locations for the film were in Toronto, familiar territory, of course, for the Canadian-born filmmaker. Art directors Richard Paris and Linda Del Rosario built the Exotica strip club set in an unused room in the Party Centre in downtown Toronto, and it's a building with construction commencing May 1993. During production, several people arrived at the set believing that it was a real strip club. And for the outside of the club, the filmmakers used a shop on Mutual Street, which has since, of course, been torn down. Casting was relatively straightforward as Egoyan's own wife, Arsene Kajian, played the club owner Zoe, and she had appeared in all of his previous films. Zoe is pregnant with Eric's child, and in reality Kajian was also pregnant during the filming, with Egoyan's son Arshil. Now, Egoyan later expressed regret for surrounding Kajian with nude women when she was unsure how her own body would change during her first pregnancy. Bruce Greenwood was cast in the film after he met Egoyan through a mutual friend in a bar, before the director had raised his international profile. Greenwood had previously appeared in St. Elsewhere and Knots Landing on television. Exotica was invited to compete in the Cannes Film Festival in May 1994, and that was the first invitation for a Canadian film in several years. The film was released on 3 screens in Toronto by Alliance Communications on September the 29th, 1994. And in the US, the film was initially released by Miramax Pictures in 6 cities. Now, critics reacted favourably to the film, with Roger Ebert adding it to his great movies list and citing it as a deep, painful film about those closed worlds of stage-managed lust. And Jonathan Rosenbaum called it a must-see and lush and affecting, praised its score, the set and the camera movements. Now, the disc for Exotica has a generous sprinkling of features. A new restored 4K digital transfer supervised and approved by director Atom Egoyan and director of photography Paul Zarossi. An audio soundtrack on the Blu-ray, which is 2.0 DTS HD Master. Audio commentary featuring Egoyan and the composer Michael Dana. New conversation between Egoyan and filmmaker and actor Sarah Polley. Calendar, a 1993 feature film by Egoyan with a new introduction. Peep Show, a 1981 short film by Egoyan. En Passant, a 1991 short film by Egoyan featuring Morey Chaikin and Arsene Kajian. Auto Double Bill, a 2007 short film by Egoyan commissioned for the 60th anniversary of the Cannes Film Festival. Audio from Exotica's 1994 Cannes Film Festival press conference, featuring Egoyan, Kajian, actor Bruce Greenwood, and the producer of the film, Camelia Freiberg. And an essay, of course, by the author and filmmaker Jason Wood. And we also have cover art for the film by David de la Haresse. In Exotica, Aton Egoyan masterfully weaves together past and present, constructing a spellbinding narrative puzzle, the full emotional impact of which doesn't hit until the last piece is in place. The film's a running time of 103 minutes, and it releases on Tuesday 20th of September in the US as Spine 1150. A mysterious writer of poison pen letters, known only as Le Corbeau, the Raven, plagues a French provincial town, exposing the collective suspicion and rancour seething beneath the community's calm surface. Made during the Nazi occupation of France, Henri-Georges Clouzot's Le Corbeau was attacked by the right-wing Vichy regime, the left-wing resistance press, and the Catholic Church, and was banned after the liberation. But some, including Jean Cocteau and Jean-Paul Sartre, recognised the powerful subtext of Clouzot's anti-informant, anti-Gestapo fable, and worked to rehabilitate its directorial reputation after the war. Le Corbeau brilliantly captures the paranoid pettiness and self-loathing that turned an occupied French town into a 20th century Salem. Henri-Georges Clouzot isn't new to the collection, of course. He has the brilliant and thrilling Wages of Fear and Cahiers des Orfèvres on DVD, now out of print sadly, not to mention La Vérité and the unforgettable Diabolique, completing the list of his work in the collection. He has also directed documentary films, including The Mystery of Picasso, which was declared a national treasure by the government of France. He was later hired by producer Adolphe Ozzo to work in Berlin, writing French-language versions of German films. After being fired from the UFA studio in Nazi Germany due to his friendship with Jewish producers, Clouzot returned to France, where he spent years bedridden after contracting tuberculosis. And upon recovering from that, he found work in Nazi-occupied France as a screenwriter for the German-owned company Continental Films. At Continental, Clouzot wrote and directed films that were very popular. His second film, Le Corbeau, drew controversy over its harsh look at provincial France, and he was fired from Continental just before its release. As a result of his association with Continental, he was barred by the French government as well from filmmaking until 1947. His work was hailed throughout Europe in the 50s and 60s. La Vérité was his second most popular film in France, with 5.7 million spectators, and was Brigitte Bardot's highest grossing film. The film was nominated for the Academy Award for Best Foreign Language Film. His health began to fail in the 1970s, and he passed away sadly in 1977, leaving a rich legacy of work of film fans to enjoy. Now, the cast features Pierre Fresnay as Dr. Rémy Germain, Jeanette Leclerc as Denise Salion, Pierre Laquet as Dr. Michel Vorzay, Hélène Manson as Marie Corbin, Pierre Bertin as the sub-prefect, and Liane Magnier as Roland Salion. Now, one notable legacy of the film was to make crow a term for a malicious informant, and in 1984 an anonymous letter writer and phone caller taunted a young family in L'éponge-sur-Vologne. The family's 4-year-old son Gregory was abducted and found drowned in the river. The media labelled the anonymous killer, or killers, Le Corbeau. No one, of course, has been apprehended for that crime. In 2006, the film enjoyed a resurgence in popularity in Paris after the Clearstream affair, in which anonymous letters accused French politicians of having hidden bank accounts. Now, sadly, not too many features are contained on this disc. We have the 4K restoration with mono soundtrack on the Blu-ray, an interview with filmmaker Bertrand Tavernier, and excerpts from the story of French cinema by those who made it. Grande Illusion from 1939 to 1942. That's a 1975 documentary featuring director Henri-Georges Clouzot. There's a trailer for the film and an essay by the film scholar Alan Williams. And the new cover art for Le Corbeau is by Jick Club. Le Corbeau, or The Raven, has a running time of 91 minutes and is black and white, and was previously in the collection and is now out of print on DVD, but the reissued Blu-ray releases on Tuesday, 20th of September A Spine 227. Now we move to the UK and to Charlie Chaplin's first real talkie, The Great Dictator, which joins the UK collection on the 26th of September. Of course, there are quite a few Charlie Chaplin classics already in the US collection. We have City Lights, Modern Times, The Gold Rush, The Circus, Monsieur Verdot, The Kid, and Limelight. But this is the second Chaplin feature to arrive in the UK collection. In this controversial masterpiece, The Great Dictator, Charlie Chaplin offers both a cutting caricature of Adolf Hitler and a sly tweaking of his own comic persona. Chaplin, in his first pure talkie, brings his sublime physicality to two roles: the cruel yet clownish Tomanian dictator and the kindly Jewish barber who is mistaken for him. Featuring Jack Oakie and Paulette Goddard in stellar supporting turns, The Great Dictator boldly goes after the fascist leader before the US's official entry into World War II. And it's an audacious amalgam of politics and slapstick that culminates in Chaplin's famous impassioned speech. Chaplin was quite brave to lampoon the Fuhrer at that time, considering it was 1940 and being British born, and the film releasing not long after Dunkirk and the evacuation of troops, but he was protected by the relative safety of the Hollywood system. Now, The Great Dictator was popular with audiences and became Chaplin's most commercially successful film. Modern critics had praised it as historically significant and one of the greatest comedy films ever made, and an important work of satire as well. It was also a clever move by Chaplin to produce a talking picture, as he dabbled a little bit with recorded voice and effects before in modern times, but in The Great Dictator he went full out, and as well as being a visual comedic performer, he had a pleasing speaking voice as well, which he used to great comic effect, giving his soliloquy towards the end of the film. Chaplin's climactic monologue has frequently been listed by critics, historians and film buffs as perhaps the greatest monologue in film history, and possibly the most poignant recorded speech of the 20th century. Now, according to Jürgen Trimborn's biography of Nazi propaganda filmmaker Leni Riefenstahl, both Chaplin and French filmmaker René Clair viewed Riefenstahl's Triumph of the Will together at the showing of a New York Museum of Modern Art. And filmmaker Louis Buñuel reports that Clair was horrified by the power of the film, crying out that this should never be shown or the West was lost. Chaplin, on the other hand, laughed uproariously at the film. He used it to inspire many elements of The Great Dictator, and by repeatedly viewing this film, Chaplin could closely mimic Hitler's mannerisms. Now, The Great Dictator was nominated for 5 Academy Awards: Outstanding Production, Best Actor, Best Writing, Original Screenplay, Best Supporting Actor for Jack Oakie, and Best Music, Original Score. In his 1964 autobiography, Chaplin stated that he could not have made the film and played the Jewish barber in it if he'd known about the true extent of the horrors taking place in Nazi concentration camps at the time. During the film's production, the British government had announced that it would prohibit its exhibition in the UK, in keeping with its appeasement policy concerning Nazi Germany. But by the time the film was released, the UK was at war with Germany, and the film was welcomed, in part, for its obvious propaganda appeal. In 1941, London's Prince of Wales Theatre screened its UK premiere. The film's been banned in many parts of Europe, and the theatre's owner, Alfred Estelle, was apparently fined for showing it. Now, the features on the Blu-ray for The Great Dictator are: new high-definition digital restoration with uncompressed mono soundtrack, a new audio commentary by Charlie Chaplin experts Dan Kamen and Human Miran, The Tramp and the Dictator from 2001, Kevin Brownlow and Michael Cloft's documentary paralleling the lives of Chaplin and Adolf Hitler, including interviews with author Ray Bradbury, director Sidney Lumet, screenwriter Bud Schulberg, and others. 2 new visual essays, one by Chaplin archivist Cecilia Cencigliarelli and one by Chaplin biographer Jeffrey Vance. Colour production footage shot by Chaplin's half-brother Sidney. Barbershop sequence from Sidney Chaplin's 1921 film King, Queen, Joker. Deleted barbershop sequence from Chaplin's 1919 film Sunnyside, a re-release trailer, and a booklet featuring a new essay by film critic Michael Wood, Chaplin's 1940 New York Times defense of his movie, a reprint from critic Jean Arboni on the film's final speech, and Al Hirschfeld's original press book illustrations for the film. And cover design is by Ollie Moss, fairly simple and yet ingenious, with a black head on a red background, changing from Hitler to Chaplin when it's rotated 180 degrees. And the film has a running time of 125 minutes and entered the Criterion collection in the US on May 24th, 2011, and it's due to debut here in the UK collection on Monday the 26th of September as Spine 565. Finally released on the UK collection, we have Hearts and Minds. Now this is a startling and courageous film. Peter Davis's landmark 1974 documentary unflinchingly confronts the United States' involvement in Vietnam at the height of the controversy that surrounded it. Using a wealth of sources from interviews to newsreels to footage of the conflict itself and the upheaval it occasioned on the home front, Davis constructs a powerfully affecting picture of the disastrous effects of war. Explosive, persuasive and wrenching, Hearts and Minds is an overwhelming emotional experience and the most important non-fiction film ever made about this devastating period in history. Now, Criterion have quite a few great documentary features in the collection already, and this is no exception. The film premiered at the 1974 Cannes Film Festival. Commercial distribution was delayed in the United States due to legal issues at the time, including a temporary restraining order obtained by one of the interviewees in the film, former National Security Advisor Walt Rostow, who had claimed through his attorney that the film was somewhat misleading and not representative, and that he had not been given the opportunity to approve the results of his interview. Columbia Pictures refused to distribute the picture altogether, which forced the producers to purchase back the rights and release it by other means. Now, the film was shown in Los Angeles for the 1 week it needed to be eligible for consideration in the 1974 Academy Awards. Other major interviewees in the film include Clark Clifford, Senator J. W. Fulbright, Chairman of Foreign Relations Committee, J. Edgar Hoover, Daniel Ellsberg, former aide from the Defense Department, Nguyen Van Toi, a Vietnamese man, Father Chan Tin of Saigon, and John Foster Dulles. He was the US Secretary of State from 1953 to 1959. Hearts and Minds has certainly attracted wild, polarised opinions from film critics since its release. Vincent Corbeau of the New York Times called it an epic documentary. Others have critiqued it for its somewhat biased views. After Columbia Pictures refused to distribute the picture itself, producer Bert Schneider went to Henry Jaglom and Howard Zucker to purchase back the rights and release the film separately in March 1975 through Warner Brothers. The disc comes with the following features: a high-definition digital restoration supervised by the director Peter Davis and the cinematographer Richard Pierce with uncompressed mono soundtrack. Audio commentary featuring Davis, a collection over 2 hours of Davis's unused footage, including excerpts from the interviews he took with presidential advisor George Ball, broadcast journalist David Brinkley, French journalist and historian Philippe de Villers, and political activist Tony Russo, additional excerpts from General William Westmoreland's interview, additional audio excerpts from presidential advisor Walt Rostow's interview, and scenes from a funeral and a military hospital in South Vietnam. And there's a written booklet featuring essays by Davis, film critic Judith Christ, and historians Robert K. Brigham, George C. Herring, and Ngo Vinh Long. New cover art is by Luba Lukova. Hearts and Minds is an amazing documentary and has a running time of 112 minutes and is Spine 156 in the collection, releasing on Monday 26th September in the UK. Established by Martin Scorsese in 2007, the Film Foundation's World Cinema Project has maintained a fierce commitment to preserving and presenting masterpieces from around the globe, with a growing roster of dozens of restorations that have introduced moviegoers to often overlooked areas of cinema history. Now, there already have been 3 sets so far of the World Cinema Project, and 2 standalone releases on Blu-ray already exist from films in the first project. That's Trances, a Moroccan film, and Tuki Buki, a Senegalese film. In Martin Scorsese's World Cinema Project number 4, the set gathers 6 more important works from Angola, Sambizanga, Argentina, Prisioneros de la Tierra, Iran, Chess of the Wind, Cameroon, Muno Moto, Hungary, Two Girls on the Street, and India, Kalpana. Now, each title is an essential contribution to the art form and a window onto a filmmaking tradition that international audiences previously had limited opportunities to experience. Now, let's look at each feature briefly, starting with Zambizanga, a 1972 film by director Serra Maldoror. Set in 1961 at the onset of the Angolan War of Independence, it follows the struggles of Angolan militants involved with the popular movement for the liberation of Angola, the MPLA, an anti-colonial political movement of which Maldoror's husband, Mario Couto Pinto de Larandra, was a leader. The film was shot on location in the People's Republic of Congo, also known as Congo-Brazzaville, in 7 weeks. And Zambizanga is the name of the working-class neighbourhood in Luanda where a Portuguese prison was located, to which many Angolan militants were taken to be tortured and eventually killed. And on February the 4th, 1961, this prison was attacked by MPLA forces. Then we have from Argentina, Prisioneros de la Tierra, a 1939 Argentine drama film directed by Mario Soffici. The film premiered in Buenos Aires. The film is often cited as one of the greatest in the history of Argentine cinema and established Soffici as a social filmmaker. It was awarded by the municipality of Buenos Aires as the best film of the year and the Silver Condor Award instituted by the Argentine Association of Film Critics. In 2019, the Museo del Cine of Argentina, with the support of Martin Scorsese's Film Foundation and the laboratory of the Cineteca de Bologna, restored Prisoners of the Land from two 35mm prints of the film found both in Paris at the Cinémathèque Française and in Prague at the Czech Film Archive. The discovery of these two prints was crucial. Due to the lack of a national cinematheque and protective cultural politics, the original Argentine negative had been lost during the last century, and the only copy left in the country was a degraded 16mm copy. Paula Felix Didier, head of the Museo del Cine and the principal responsible for the restoration, said about the significance of this new copy that it was a new possibility of seeing one of the fundamental films of the history of Argentine cinema, and it had been decades ago and could not be seen, and once again having a deep heritage rescue to understand the history of Argentine cinema and its evolution. The third film in the set is Chess of the Wind. Now, this rediscovered jewel of Iranian cinema has re-emerged as one of the most astonishing works of the country's pre-revolutionary new wave. A hypnotically stylized murder mystery awash in period atmosphere, Chess of the Wind unfolds inside a candlelit mansion, where a web of greed, violence and betrayal ensnares potential heirs as they vie for control of their matriarch's estate. Melding the influences of European modernism, Gothic horror and classical Persian art, Mohammad Reza Alzlani crafts an exquisitely restrained mood piece that erupts into a subversive final act in which class conventions, gender roles and time itself are upended with shocking veracity. The fourth title is Muno Moto from Africa. Now, Muno Moto is a 1975 Cameroonian drama film written and directed by Jean-Pierre Dikongue Pipa. Ngando and Ndome are in love. Ngando wishes to marry Ndome, but her family reminds him that the traditional dowry must be settled first. Unfortunately, Ngando is poor and unable to fulfill the family tradition. In Two Girls on the Street, the maverick Hollywood stylist André de Toth sharpens his craft in his native Hungary, including making the chic, dynamic melodrama studded with deco decor and jazzy musical interludes. Two upwardly mobile working women, one a musician in an all-girl band, the other a bricklayer, join forces in their attempts to make it in Budapest, supporting each other through changing fortunes, the advances of lecherous men and the highs and heartbreaks of love. Kinetic camera work, brisk editing and avant-garde imagery abound in this often striking modern role to the power of working-class female solidarity. And the final film in the six-film set is a film from India called Kalpana. Here's a list of each film with its running times and release dates. They don't have individual spines, but the set as a whole is spine 1142 and it releases on Tuesday the 27th of September in the US only. British actor Riz Ahmed is famous for his appearance in his first film, The Road to Guantanamo, as well as British-made films like Shifty, Four Lions, Ill Manners, and of course breaking into Hollywood in Nightcrawler, Jason Bourne, Rogue One and Venom, as well as indie projects he produced like Mogul Mowgli, available on BFI Blu-ray here in the UK. More recently, he used his voice on Flea and was well lauded by critics and the Motion Picture Academy in the US. The Sound of Metal may as well have been made for Riz Ahmed. He plays a drummer, Ruben, in an indie metal band who is fast losing his hearing, and this is causing himself and his girlfriend, lead singer Lou, played by Olivia Cooke, some serious problems, both with their performances and relationship. He is struggling to come to terms with the situation and the fact that he may have to stop playing altogether. After breaking down completely at a gig, he reluctantly checks into a deafness retreat, and as well as learning a lot about his selfish nature, he learns how to become tolerant and a better human being through his encounter with other deaf people and a mentor called Joe, played excellently by Paul Raci. Now, what this film cleverly does with the use of sound is put the viewer in the position of a person who is first losing his hearing and then fully deaf, and how they deal with the world around them. Directed by Darius Marder, who wrote the story with Derek Cianfrance and who also wrote the screenplay with his brother Abraham Marder. The film originated as the unfinished Cianfrance project Metalhead, which centred on a metal drummer whose eardrums are ruptured and he becomes deaf as a result. The film featured the members of the band Jucifer portraying themselves. However, the project was later scrapped, until Cianfrance's friend Darius Marder took it up, of course. In January 2016, Dakota Johnson and Matthias Schoenaerts joined the cast of the film, with Marder directing. And in July 2018, Riz Ahmed and Olivia Cooke replaced them in the film. And before the casting, Marder had spent 13 years vetting actors who would match his commitment to the film. A large number of the cast in the film were hired from the deaf community itself, and for 8 months Ahmed prepared for the film by spending 2 hours a day learning American Sign Language, 2 hours a day in drum lessons, 2 hours a day with a personal trainer, and the remainder with his acting coach. That's a very full day for anybody. Marder wanted Ahmed to trust his instincts and didn't allow him to review any dailies of his performance or script analysis. The film was nominated for Best Director and Best Film at the Oscars, with Riz Ahmed up for Best Actor. And sadly, it didn't win any of those acting awards and instead was given its Oscars for its superb film editing by Mikael E. G. Nielsen and for Best Sound Design from Nicholas Becker, Jaime Basht, Michel Kutolek and Carlos Cortez Navarrete and Philip Blad. Trust me when I say you need to watch this film with surround sound, if possible, and you will hear the amazing work that has been done by these talented sound creatives. The Sound of Metal comes to 4K UHD Dolby Vision HDR with an accompanying Blu-ray containing the following special features: an alternate French dubbed soundtrack, new conversation between Marder and filmmaker Derek Cianfrance, who share a story credit on the film itself. New programme about the film's sound featuring Marder and sound editor Nicholas Becker. Music video for Abraham Marder's song Green, featuring outtakes from the film and a new introduction by Darius Marder. Featurette on the film, a trailer, English subtitles for the deaf and hard of hearing, particularly important in this release, and an essay by the critic Roxana Haddadi. New cover art is by William Laboure. The Sound of Metal looks at what it means to live as a deaf person nowadays, and to discover deafness as not a disability, but a rich culture and community. And it sits alongside more recent successes in this community like Coda, and shows diversity has definitely got a place in Hollywood and mainstream cinema. The film's a running time of 120 minutes, and it comes to the US collection on Tuesday the 27th of September, and it's Spine 1151. Also available, Buck and the Preacher, and it's a welcome addition to the collection. With his risingly entertaining directorial debut, Sidney Poitier, alongside actor-producer Harry Belafonte, helped rewrite the history of the Western, bringing black heroes to a genre in which they had always been sorely underrepresented. Combining boisterous buddy comedy with blistering black power, Poitier and a marvellously mischievous Belafonte star as a tough and taciturn wagon master and an unscrupulous pistol-packing preacher who join forces in order to take on the white bounty hunters threatening a westward-bound caravan of people recently emancipated from slavery. The supplemental features on the Buck and the Preacher disc are a new interview with Maya Mask, the author of Black Rodeo, A History of the African-American Western. Behind-the-scenes footage featuring actor-director Sidney Poitier and actor-producer Harry Belafonte. Interviews with Poitier and Belafonte from 1972 episodes of Soul and The Dick Cavett Show. A new interview with Gina Belafonte, the daughter of Harry. And a written essay by the critic Aisha Harris. A new illustration on the cover art for the disc is by Sean Phillip. Buck and the Preacher was released in 1972 and has a running time of 103 minutes, and it joins the collection in the UK on Monday the 26th of September, and its spine 1140. And that brings an end to this edition of Let's Talk Criterion. And as I record this channel, we are at 300 subscribers, which is a fantastic achievement from last year's start. Thanks to everyone out there who has given support to this channel. Next month, it's a good month with a 4K UHD upgrade of George A. Romero's Night of the Living Dead. David Lynch brings us the 4K UHD release of his film Lost Highway in the US and the Blu-ray in the UK, as well as Eve's Bayou, directed by Kanzi Lemons, and the Arsenic Onodlias classic, La Llorona, the rival of Kiyoshi Kurosawa's Cure, all coming out in the US. And finally in the UK, we have a film getting its release a month from the US release, and that is Takeout. So, until next month, from me, as always, it's goodbye, and above all, good viewing.